Welcome to the Top Business Leaders Show, powered by Rise 25 Media. We feature top founders, executives, and business leaders from all over the world.
Chad Franzen here, co-host for this show where we feature top restaurateurs, investors, and business leaders. This is part of our SpotOn series. SpotOn has the best-in-class payment platform for retail, and they have a flagship solution called SpotOn Restaurant, where they combine marketing, software, and payments all in one. They've served everyone from larger chains like Dairy Queen and Subway to small mom and pop restaurants. To learn more, go to SpotOn.com. This episode is brought to you by Rise 25. We help B2B businesses to get ROI, clients, referrals, and strategic partnerships through Done For You podcasts. If you have a B2B business and want to build great relationships with clients, referral partners, and thought leaders in your space, there's no better way to do it than through podcasts and content marketing. To learn more, go to rise25.com or email us at support@rise25.com. Matthew Guelke is CEO and co-founder of The Plant Cafe Organic, a San Francisco Bay Area restaurant group known for being one of the most sustainable brands in the Bay Area. The Plant was voted the most sustainable restaurant in the San Francisco Bay Area by the Nature Conservancy. And in January of 2023, this year, The Plant was recognized as in the top 30 global food and beverage brands by the Retail Leaders Sustainable Impact Award. Hey, Matthew, it's great to have you today. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Hey, tell me how the Plant Cafe Organic came about.
That's an interesting story. So pleasure to tell you. So I'm Canadian, and I moved to America right around 2001, about a week before 9/11, just so I'll never forget that. And I worked in tech for a while there. And at the time, one of my sister's brother-in-laws, who's a doctor, unfortunately got sick. He got cancer, and he eventually passed away. But it inspired my family to all go to a health retreat. This place called Hippocrates Health Institute in West Palm Beach, Florida, which essentially what it does is it takes all the food that's not healthy for you and replaces it only with the healthiest healing foods. Hence the name Hippocrates, let food be thy medicine. Anyway, I was there with my two older sisters and my parents, and we ate raw organic food for 3 weeks, eliminated everything else. Very, very healthy eating. And it really reset the bar on what I thought healthy food was, or how healthy you could be, I guess. Mm-hmm. So I was quite healthy at the time anyway. But my parents saw huge health benefits, and I also met several people that had terminal cancers, and they were told they could not, get your affairs in order is a kind of a statement used by doctors when there's nothing more they can do. And I met several people that were told that, and now they were living healthier lives than ever, and their cancer had gone away. So it inspired me. I went back to San Francisco after that, and I approached the chairman of the board of the software company I was working for. And I said, hey, I've got this concept for a restaurant, and I'd never worked in a restaurant in my life. And here's what it is. Everything's got to be 100% organic. So you know what's not in your food. So you know it's less toxins. And then make it flexitarian. So you can have vegans, but also meat eaters share a space. The meat has got to be sustainable and chemically devoid of all chemicals. And I want to do this. And so he said, I love the idea. He started eating the same way as me, lost a lot of weight, got really healthy. And so we decided to do it together. So we opened our first restaurant in end of 2005. Mm-hmm. Really, it was a complete test. And, back then juicing wasn't a big thing, but we made it a big part of our business. And I remember the restaurateurs around us were saying, oh yeah, you'll be okay, but I don't know if you're going to have dinner business and all this. We went from just word of mouth marketing, essentially grassroots, pretty within a few months, we went from $3,000 a month in sales to 8, 9, 10,000, and we're packed. And so from there, we opened more restaurants as we went along. And that's kind of how we got started. But the concept and the mission was offering clean, healthy food to the mainstream and supporting ethical businesses so that those businesses can survive and people can support them. And, it's a sort of also supporting the environment. So our goals were health of people, health of the environment. So that's sort of how we got started.
Yeah, wow, that's very interesting. So you said you had never had a restaurant experience before, yet it sounds like you've been pretty successful. What do you think has been kind of the key to your success?
I would say transparency and kind of core mission. So if you give people what they want and they need, that sort of works. And again, there's a lot of restaurants out there. You've heard the terms greenwashing, or a lot of restaurants that I'd see on menu. Their menus would say things like organic wherever possible, which is sort of meaningless. The underlying meaning for that is whatever's cheapest that we can give to you that's organic, we'll give you that, and the rest we won't really tell you. But the reality is that the most expensive stuff is the most important stuff to be organic. So, for example, meat, you don't want hormones, you don't want antibiotics, you don't want, and same with your vegetables, but also your dairy. You just don't. If cows are fed antibiotics and hormones, those go into your bodies as well. And there's all kinds of studies that show when you provide organic food versus non-organic food, and you test the system, people's bodies afterwards, it's much less toxicity. So I think just the very clean and honest approach just, won people over.
So you call it the Plant Cafe, but it's not 100% plant-based.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's there's, sometimes that hurts us a little, I think, but we actually we came out with the name Lettuce, Lettus. And then a very big company called Lettuce Entertainment came after us and said, even though we had got the trademark, they wanted to sue us. And so instead of going that route, we just said, okay, we'll change our name. And no one had the plant. But sometimes people think we're vegan or vegetarian only. But really what we are is we're flexitarian.
Sure. Where was your first location? And you talked a little bit about what the early days were like there. Did you have to get the word out? What were the early days like there? And were there kind of challenges that came from opening your first restaurant?
So the area is the Marina area where we opened our first restaurant, which is a very trendy, fairly expensive area in San Francisco. The first area we looked at was Palo Alto. And the landlords of some of the spaces we were looking at said, well, who are you? Where's your background? We're not renting to you. And, we were looking in fairly high traffic, well-to-do areas. And eventually we just had a contact through tech, actually, that found us the space, and it took off. So that was the first location, but it was a little tricky to find a space without having sort of a background at first.
Is there anything that would you say like a challenge you have to overcome in terms of getting customers? Would you say maybe like people think of organic food and they think of Whole Foods being really expensive? Is that like a challenge you have to overcome, or what would you say is a challenge that you guys have to overcome often?
Well, that is a challenge for sure, because to make a very extreme example, fast food from McDonald's is always going to be cheaper than places that source from farms that are massive is going to be cheaper than sourcing from an organic farm where they rotate their crops. They put cover crops every year so that the soil replenishes, but it's much healthier food. So I think what the challenge is it's a little more expensive. So instead of, back then, a sandwich, instead of being $9 somewhere, it was $11. Now it's more like $15, but especially in San Francisco. So there was that challenge. However, I think it was met by the fact that there are people out there that are really looking for this kind of food. And so it kind of worked out. We kind of hit a niche market. What hurt us, which was difficult, was a few years later, you had more concepts coming out that were sort of geared or marketed towards green food or sustainable. Also is a term that's used that doesn't necessarily have much meaning. when it's used by some other companies. But so that blurred the niche a little bit, but we have a pretty good customer base. So it worked out, you know.
Yeah, sure. How did the COVID pandemic impact or change your operations?
Wow, that's in such a massive way, quite honestly. I mean, we shut down 4 locations.
Oh, wow.
I mean, part of the problem was that being in San Francisco, which is the hardest market for restaurants in America, number one, most difficult. It's the most expensive place to run a business, especially a restaurant business, and there's a lot of competition. Um, and in the pandemic, San Francisco and California, they basically shut everything down, completely locked down. So at first, as we all know, it was like, okay, you know, we're going to shut down everybody or lock down for 2 to 4 weeks. And so we closed a bunch of the restaurants, and we fully assumed that we'd be reopening. And that went on and on and on and on. And eventually we just said we can't handle this rent liability because there was no protection for the tenants. The protection was you wouldn't get evicted, but there's no protection against the rent for closed locations. And we actually got sued by 2 of our landlords for rent due based on being shut, but we were mandated to shut. All right.
Right.
And we laid off 75, 80 employees that we thought, well, first we didn't lay them off. We just temporarily closed, but eventually it was a layoff. It was really quite sad, actually. And so we had to really recalibrate. And quite honestly, both myself and my business partner, we both took mortgages out on our houses to pay off lawsuits because there was no protection. We eked through, and now there's quite a silver lining in a way because we've refocused our energy, you know, in many ways. So, but it was very, very difficult. And I know many, many restaurateurs that lost everything, and they were very successful beforehand, and now they're bankrupt and in big trouble. So,
Man, I'm sorry to hear that. Was there
yeah.
anything maybe like a learning experience that you took from that ended up being positive, like something you learned?
Yes. Well, so what the model we were going along was brick and mortar locations, you know, more and more. And we were up to 8. And then we have 1 franchise, which we licensed to in the SFO Terminal 2, which is great. I mean, it took a hit during the pandemic as well, obviously, because of the flights. But the thing about having brick and mortar locations is our staff was up to 200 at one point. And my job went from being conceptual, and marketing and menu and all these kinds of things to managing people, which isn't my favorite thing, quite honestly, not managing large numbers of people. So as a result, I mean, we've learned a lot. We had several different business models. We had the fast casual neighborhood cafe. We had fast casual financial downtown district cafe. And then we had 2 full service fine dining restaurants. And what we learned pre-pandemic was the full service fine dining was not the model we wanted, because our goal is to proliferate organic food to the masses. And by having fine dining restaurants, they're more expensive, there's more staff, everything has to be perfect. And where we want to kind of spread this, far and wide. So as a result of having to close down a bunch of restaurants and sadly lay off our director of operations and our director of technology, et cetera, I've stepped fully back into those roles, and we've started licensing our brand. So we've licensed our brand to our salad menu to a group called Local Kitchens that takes their favorite brands and puts them together in one location. We also have several options to franchise out, and that means it's not your own capital.
Mm-hmm.
We've been approached by several landlords and different companies saying, "Will you open here? Will you open there?" And my response is, we just closed all these restaurants, which cost us millions of dollars, which we lost, sadly.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not looking to open more. We want to leverage the brand so that we can spread it across the country. And what I've what I've learned is actually some people are against franchising because they think that it affects the brand quality. However, if you're careful and you've got a very simple and efficient model, then if your goal is to expand this concept on a sort of a greater scale, then it's actually a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
And I can put my energies with less staff to just expanding the brand and having a little bit less liability because you don't have to build the restaurants out ourselves, right? So I think it's redirected our brand in a very positive direction. It simplified things for me and for my remaining staff. But it was sad. I mean, it was difficult to close down all these really amazing restaurants, quite honestly.
Yeah, I would imagine. So you had you have 5 open locations right now, but you had 4 more than that prior?
No, we just have 2.
Oh, you have 2.
2. And then we license our brand to 3 others.
Okay.
And we've got 3 different franchise companies that would like us to work with them to expand the brand. And so for the last 2 years, I've really been working on creating a scalable model for franchises.
Yeah. And
because we're recognized as one of the most sustainable, and again, that word is used sometimes loosely, but in our case, it's very honest and accurate. We're recognized in the United States as one of the 4, or even globally as being on the forefront of that, because we don't compromise. We're just 100% organic, and we say where everything comes from and every single ingredient. So, and it's even more and more popular now, and it should be, because it's, if you don't have your health, nothing else matters. So yeah, we've really switched our trajectory to licensing. Yeah.
Okay. What would you say? Would you say that what you just stated makes the Plant Cafe organic an attractive franchise opportunity, or are there other things as well?
I think the most attractive thing is the reputation we've gained. Also, our sales speak for themselves. That's pretty important. But yeah, we stand as sort of apart from a lot of other brands. I mean, I remember when I was trying to figure out a name, and at first, this is 15 years ago or so, I was thinking it's got to be green this or green that, and decided against it. And then you had mixed greens and tender greens and sweet greens, and all these kind of companies come out, and we're different from them. They're great. I have nothing negative to say about any of those brands. They're great. They're healthy food. They're good. We're just different in the sense that we're committed to 100%. And so there are those people looking for that. And as a result, we've also figured out, we've got really good technology and systems in place so that we're analyzing our food costs every week. So if broccoli or chicken or, organic chicken or such, it goes up, we're on it. So we've got a very fine-tuned system in place at this point. So I think the overall, our track record, our brand concept, our recognition from all kinds of accolades that we've got. And, I've gone to Bali, and people know the Plant Cafe. People out of New York know the Plant. I mean, it kind of blows my mind how many people know about it. I brought this, the Plant Burger, which we trademarked, and it's, in my opinion, but I'm biased, obviously, the best plant-based burger that I've had ever. And I brought the recipe down from Canada and had that. And it's not trying to taste like meat. The problem with the burgers that try to taste like meat is they're highly processed, because that's the only way you can do that. So a lot of people have this misconception. Plant-based is better for you. Well, it's not necessarily. Doritos are plant-based. They're not good for you. So ours doesn't taste like meat, but it's really good. And so yeah, we've got certain things that we've built and tweaked over the years that I think make it a really great, exciting opportunity for people to expand upon.
Sure, absolutely. What would you look for, or do you look for, in a potential franchisee?
Well, I was just having that conversation 2 days ago with this franchise company. There's two kind of caveats. You have some franchise groups that want only larger companies that can open 5 or more.
Mhm.
and have a ton of experience, and then some that'll take anyone who comes along. And we're somewhere in the middle. If somebody, preferably restaurant experience, is what we look for. But we do get a lot of interest from people that just love the brand, and they say, hey, we love healthy eating, we love your food, and we want to open a restaurant. And we're open to that because, again, we want to expand the brand. But what many people that have never run a restaurant, myself included 15 years ago, don't understand is there's a lot to it. But that's the beauty of franchising is someone that's done it for 10 or 15 years has already overcome and figured out many of those things. I've been asked in the past, if you could do something differently now than you did in the past, is there anything? And there's so many things. If I could go back and know what I know now, back then I would have saved a lot of money.
Yeah. Hey, I went through, I had a connecting flight in the San Francisco International Airport about a month ago. And I remember seeing your restaurant. It was like midnight, so I didn't have a chance to go anywhere to eat. But how have you enjoyed that, having that location there?
Oh, it's been phenomenal. We I can't remember what year it was exactly, but basically Terminal 2, when it was being built, one of their key requirements was that the concepts that went in there were sustainable. And so we got approached by a few different companies that wanted to franchise us. And we ended up going with one, and they had several other restaurants, so they knew what they were doing. So they took very little training. We trained them, of course, and we did the architecture and the menu and everything like that with them, and we check on their ingredients regularly. But it's been great because it's been high exposure, and we get constant feedback saying, hey, we get into airports and there's nothing healthy, and then we saw your location and we're so happy. And that place, that location, its sales are unbelievable. I mean, for per square footage, I've told some potential investors, and they think I must be mistaken. I mean, I think the square footage is probably about 600 or 700 square feet because it's an airport, and they're doing between 250 and 300 grand sales a month.
Oh, wow.
I mean,
I would think that airports would be good because you have kind of a captive audience, I guess, for lack of a better way to put it. There's just people there, and they need something to do or something to eat, and you've got them.
And when you're one of the only sort of healthy brands, because there's lots of bars with burgers and all this stuff, then all of a sudden, for whatever that segment is that kind of appreciates healthy food and organic, sustainable, ethically sourced, it's like a bing, bing, bing. It's a little lighthouse. So it's been great.
I have one more question for you, but first, tell me how people can find out more about the Plant Cafe Organic, either as a customer or a potential franchisee.
Well, I read every email that comes to contact@theplantcafe.com. So I'll see all of those. Our website is www.theplantcafe.com. And then if you Google the Plant Cafe or you Google my name, you'll see all kinds of articles, whether it's an op-ed I wrote in an environmental magazine or just a ton of information. So
hey, when you go to the plant yourself, what's kind of your go-to item of choice or meal of choice?
My one is the plant burger, which, as I said, it's really good. I mean, it's really good. Another one is we do a salmon dish called the ginger lime salmon. And the salmon is wild and line caught and sustainable. So it's the best fish you can get. Like if you went to the highest, most fine dining restaurant, it would be the same quality. But one of the things is we try and keep our food costs accessible to the customers. And so a lot of these third-party delivery systems, delivery companies come to me and I'm like, no, we can't work with you because our margins aren't that high where we can take a 25% cut, So we're trying to keep it accessible. It's not as cheap as McDonald's or, some of these other places, obviously, but we're trying to keep it sort of accessible. But so ginger lime salmon, I really love the salad, which is called the chicken miso chicken cashew salad, which was inspired by dish I had in Bali, which is where one of my sisters lives. Our shiitake spring rolls are great. And then the juices, my favorite juice, which is healthy, there's no sugar in it, is called the Green Detox, which is romaine, kale, lemon, cucumber, and some spice.
Wow, sounds great. Hey, Matthew, it's been great to talk to you. Best of luck with everything moving forward with the Plant Cafe Organic. And it's been great to hear your story and all of your insights. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for this great interview.
So long, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Top Business Leaders Show, powered by Rise 25. Visit rise25.com to check out more episodes of the show and to learn more about how you can start your own podcast.